Welcome back to another episode of Shout Esports. I'm your host, Jess Brohard, and in this episode, we'll go over how to cut together a reel and how to use this reel to sign with an agency. So to begin, a reel is a short video highlighting your work as a host, caster, or content creator. It's sometimes referred to as a demo reel, hype reel, or sizzle reel, and is made up of clips of your best work. It's used for a number of different things. Clients can look at your reel when deciding whether to hire you for an event. You can include it alongside a pitch deck when you're trying to get hooked up with sponsors. You can put it in a pinned tweet so that people know what your content is like and what you're about. And like we're going to talk about today, you can submit it to agencies to try to get repped by them. Your reel should include a variety of types of content, maybe some clips from your stream interspersed with interview segments, shots of you interacting with a co-caster, or clips from other people's shows that you've been a guest on. You're looking for 2 to 3 minutes of footage total, presented in a way that really shows your range and impresses whoever is watching it. As for the actual editing when you're just beginning, it's probably best to cut it yourself. Now for your first reel, you definitely don't need anything fancy, as your work should speak for itself. But as you grow in your career, you can consider hiring a professional editor. A good editor can really add some oomph when it comes to transitions, title cards, and other effects. But good editors are expensive, and until you're at the point where you're booking enough paying gigs to offset the cost, it's not really worth your money. You'll also want to update your reel periodically. As you improve at your craft, your content will get better, and your reel should reflect that. When you're submitting yourself for gigs or trying to find an agent to represent you, you want them to see what you can do now, not what you could do a year ago. And if you're looking for an agency, there isn't really a right or wrong time to sign with one, nor is it a strict necessity. I know some super successful hosts and casters who worked for years before they decided it was the right time, and I know others who found representation as soon as they possibly could, and then there are plenty who prefer to remain completely independent. But no matter when or if you decide to do this, it's not as simple as 1, cut a reel, 2, get an agent, and then 3, done, you're a full-time caster. I'll share my own timeline and experience as an example. In 2011, I started hosting videos for my own YouTube channel, and by early 2012, I had started getting a few super low-paying freelance hosting gigs, not nearly enough to quit my day job. So I freelanced on the side while working a day job and creating my own content for all of 2012. And finally, by 2013, I landed a full-time hosting gig with Curse. After a year of hosting videos for Curse, I took all that footage and cut it into a reel to submit myself to agencies, and fortunately, Character Select Agency agreed to represent me. So all told, I'd been hosting and creating content for about 3 years before I even started looking for an agent. And one of those years was spent full-time hosting in a professional studio environment. So your timeline may vary. Not to mention, signing with an agency isn't any guarantee of getting paid gigs. While an agent does help find work for you, until you reach a certain level, there's still a significant amount of hustle involved. You can't just sit back and let the gigs come to you. The other main thing an agent does is negotiating contracts to protect the talent. For instance, I once moved to New York for a year-long hosting contract, and the client wanted to be able to end the contract at any time and only give me 30 days notice and pay, but I would still be locked into a year-long apartment lease, and New York City isn't cheap. So my agent negotiated a clause where they would have to give me 6 months pay if they decided to end my contract early. Now, if I didn't have CSA pulling for me, I don't think I would have had the bargaining power to get those extra perks, and potentially could have signed a contract that was really not in my best interest. Not to mention, I wouldn't have even been on the client's radar for that gig if my agent hadn't made the connection. But of course, someone has to pay the piper. The typical way an agency makes money is by taking a percentage of your fee when they book you for a gig. If you're thinking, well, I did the work, I should keep 100% of my paycheck, then going the agency route might not be for you. Just keep in mind all the work I just mentioned that an agent does for their talent. Are you willing and able to do that work yourself instead? The more gigs your agent books for you, the more money they make, which is why you should be wary of an agency that asks you to pay them to sign on. If they're already getting paid just to have you on board, what's their incentive to find you work? They've already made their money off of you without having to actually do anything. Most reputable agencies will not ask you to pay a signing fee, but there are definitely some shady companies out there. A friend once told me that his agency charged him a signing fee and then didn't book him for a single job. It's important that you do your research and really find out who runs a company and what their experience and values are before signing on with them. Now, as for how to actually find an agency, there are so many options. You can literally Google esports talent agency to find dozens of those options, or look at some of your favorite talent and find out who their management is. In 2014, when I submitted myself to CSA, it's because I was a big fan of Anna Prosser, Smix, and Golden Boy. Since I thought they were the best of the best, I knew I wanted to be repped by the same agency. Once you've identified an agency you want to work with, look around to find some contact info. There's almost always a contact form or an email address you can find to submit your info to them. You should be sure to include your reel, links to your social media, and any relevant info about who you are and what you do. This is your chance to sell yourself. Make them want to represent you. After you submit yourself to an agency, you might just not hear anything back if they're not interested. They're pretty busy and don't necessarily have time to respond to every inquiry. So I don't think it would hurt to cast a wide net. Submit yourself to multiple different agencies and see if any of them want to work with you. And if none of them do, don't get too discouraged. Remember my 3-year timeline? And you can always submit yourself again in the future. Also keep in mind that there are no guarantees here. Unfortunately, unlike many other professions, there's no huge demand for additional esports talent. In a hospital, when more patients come in, more doctors and nurses are needed. But when more viewers discover Twitch, they can all realistically still watch the same streamers who are already creating content. When a new game comes out like Valorant, tournament organizers often hire established talent that you already know from other games like CSGO. This means that you really need to stand out among the competition. Not everyone will be successful, but I believe that anyone can. The only sure way to fail is to give up. Focus on improving and networking, because sometimes knowing the right people can get you repped by a great agency or land you a contract. And I'm going to show you how to meet those people in a future episode of Shout Esports. And if you have any questions, you can always tweet me at Jess Brohard or pop into my stream chat at twitch.tv/Jess, and I'd be happy to talk more about all this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.